he wrote back himself. And he explained that he was really flattered that she cared, but he did not know the answers to those questions. And it tells us a lot about Ike that he then forwarded that letter, instead of just throwing it away, to his mom, who was still alive in Abilene, Kansas. Jenny and Mrs. Eisenhower corresponded, confirmed that Jenny was right about everything. And it was Jenny then who wrote back and told General Eisenhower definitively where he had been born.
They're doing some restoration work for the house. So you can see here, they're working on it to keep it so that people can come and visit it and check it out. He was born in 1890, so the house is older than that. Hi everybody, we are out exploring today in the 100-degree heat. It's very
like 103 right now. I think it's really hot.
Yeah, we're in Denton, Texas today, and we're checking out the birthplace of Dwight Eisenhower. You know, we're like presidential gurus. We love to check out everything presidential. So we're going to check this out today. So come along with us.
Welcome to the site. If we have any problems of any sort, any complaints, make sure you remember my name is Tom.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Neither of you had a chance to watch the video yet, did you?
No.
That's great, I can talk more.
Yeah.
This house was built in 1877. It was part of a middle-class neighborhood that's no longer here. It was comprised of this block and the block just to the north of us that we came from. At the time, there were houses up and down the street. There were actually 3 houses back behind this one and several on the intersecting streets as well. There were also businesses. The red building that you passed in the corner on the way in was a general store. There at the time was a blacksmith shop on the near corner here. So it was just a thriving, young, middle-class neighborhood, primarily made up of young families trying to separate themselves from Denison, or downtown Denison, Texas, which was a railroad boomtown and not a savory place to raise your children, not a wholesome place. Denison had a lot of saloons and adult establishments, but that doesn't appeal to everybody. So this neighborhood was to get away from that. The problem came the next year when the railroad tracks were built right across the edge of the property there by the Katy Railroad. And people ask us, are you certain that's where the line was? We are, because it operated until 1990. Wow. So we have a really good idea of where it was. And I know you were talking about the GPS led you to a blocked off street up here.
Yeah.
So, well, it often will lead you to this blocked off street, which has been blocked off since the 1950s. And the reason it was blocked off, because it used to go through there, was that an Army major got out to take a picture of the general's house, or the president's house, birthplace, and he parked his car on the tracks and got hit by a train. Oh, right. He wasn't hurt, but apparently that wasn't the first time that sort of thing had happened, so they said, it's just time to prevent that. David Eisenhower had a year of college. I believe Ida had 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, which made them unusual for ordinary folks in those days, but that did not help them at all while they were here. David took a job with the Katy Railroad at their rail yard, which was located 4 blocks to the west of us. I'm not sure exactly what path you're taking through town here, but you may have gone over an overpass about 4 blocks from here, and that was built to go over the rail yard. There was the original viaduct, as they call it, was built in the early 1900s. And of course, they're not going over much of anything now because it was torn out when they tore the tracks out in 1990. But Mr. Eisenhower's job was wiper. And it's exactly what he did. With rags, he would wipe down the machinery, the locomotives, and other bits of equipment each day, keep them clean. You do some lubricating as well. It was an entry-level mechanics position that he expected to be promoted from pretty rapidly. The problem with that was, in 3.5 years, he was never promoted. And that, we think, is why they only stayed here for about 3.5 years. They gave up, went back to Kansas, where they had still family, and at least theoretically better financial economic opportunities. Was to be the first to go out with the doctor on a buggy ride. And it came true. Yeah. A few weeks later, they went out. There wasn't a wedding. There wasn't a second date. There wasn't even a kiss. And that disappointed Jenny. We have her on tape saying that. Right. And found paperwork that said he was born in Tyler. Tyler put up a sign, birthplace of General Eisenhower. Nobody there could remember ever meeting any Eisenhowers. Didn't matter. That was the news. So people here in Denison saw that and said, wait a minute, it's not a common name, Eisenhower, not around here. Now, actually, I had some folks in here earlier this week from Pennsylvania, and they said, it's not a common name around here. It is where we're from. Well, good. The story doesn't work up there, but it works here. It's not a common name. So Jenny, Mr. Redmond, and a few others remembered the Eisenhower name and thought, I think they had it wrong in the paper. I think General Eisenhower, if he's from North Texas, he's probably one of the family that lived here. So Jenny just took it upon herself to write him a letter during the war and ask him these things. And he was kind of busy. By this time, he was stationed in Gibraltar, commanding the war in North Africa against the Germans. Pretty soon to be named Supreme Allied Commander and plan the D-Day invasion. He was a busy fellow trying to save the world and stuff. But she wrote him a letter, and we don't know why, but that letter made its way to his desk. I have a theory. Jenny was kind of a big shot in town by this time. She taught school and been a principal here for about 50 years. She was retired. She was the head of the local Red Cross during the war. She was the head of all the women's clubs that she could be the head of. She would have known the local congressman, Sam Rayburn, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. I think somehow she used that connection to make sure Ike got her letter. Just a theory. But he read the letter, and when he saw it was from a woman he didn't know, when he saw she was asking a question that he didn't know the answer to, was he born in Denison? Was he from the family that lived in Denison? He didn't just crumple it up, throw it away like I would have under those circumstances, or hand it to a sergeant and say, write something nice. He wrote back himself. And he explained that he was really flattered that she cared, but he did not know the answers to those questions. And it tells us a lot about Ike, that he then forwarded that letter, instead of just throwing it away, to his mom, who was still alive in Abilene, Kansas. Jenny and Mrs. Eisenhower corresponded, confirmed that Jenny was right about everything. And it was Jenny then who wrote back and told General Eisenhower definitively where he had been born. And
So this is the room where he was born, but Eisenhower was born in 1890. October 14th, 1890. So this, they left a piece of this railroad, or they got a piece of this railroad and put it here to kind of show where the train was that Eisenhower's father worked on when they lived here. And it just kind of went right by the house and went through into the trees there. So I just wanted to leave that little bit of history so you could kind of know about it. It was the Katy Railway. So this was a neighborhood when the Eisenhowers lived here, and as different organizations took over the house, they moved some of the houses and they took some of them and tore them down. So it has changed the landscape a little bit. That's just because of sometimes it was owned by the park organization and they wanted to make it more park-like. So it is quite nice out here.
of the United States, the first to be born in the state of Texas. Eisenhower, affectionately known as Ike, began his military career with an appointment to West Point. He graduated with the class of 1915, later called the class stars fell on, because almost half of these new lieutenants later became generals. With World War II underway, Eisenhower had risen to brigadier general. He was chosen by President Roosevelt to plan and carry out the first U.S. offensive against Nazi Germany, the invasion of North Africa. In 1943, he was named to lead the armies of 12 nations to liberate Western Europe. The assault began on the beaches of Normandy in June 1944 and ended a year later with Germany's unconditional surrender. This great man come from? Baby Ike arrived at the house on the corner of South Lamar and East Day Streets October 14, 1890, in Denison, Texas. It was the arrival of the Missouri-Kansas-Texas Railroad, the Katy, in 1872 that turned Denison into an important gateway for the country's westward expansion. Thanks to the Katy and the town's strategic location on the Red River, Denison's population of less than 4,000 in 1880 grew to almost 11,000 by the time the Eisenhowers arrived in 1889. The prospect of a job with the Katy brought Ike's parents, David and Ida, to Texas after economic reverses in Kansas. The only work David could find was as a laborer, wiping down and lubricating arriving locomotives.
The house is open for guided tours on Sunday afternoon. Now is time for a very special visitor, Ike himself.
General Eisenhower and his friend and fellow Texan House Speaker Sam Rayburn arrived in Denison on April 20th, 1946. After a tour of the restored home, they enjoyed a big Texas breakfast in the family dining room.
Right, so we went and toured Dwight Eisenhower's birthplace. It's just a tiny little house that they restored, and walked around and saw a little video and saw a lot of the stuff inside. It wasn't a lot to see, but it's kind of neat to learn all that information, about history. I love that. And so if you ever want to go there, I just want to give you a tip. Your GPS is going to lead you all astray. It took us down to try to get us to go on this day road, which has been cut off. In the 1950s, they cut it off. So come on, Google. And then this other next road has been blocked off. So you have to go down something like Nelson or something like that. So just be aware of that if you use GPS. So we're off to some more adventures. So you go out and find your adventure, and we'll see you next time.